Hello, welcome back to Math 098. This is also another question that could be on the Math 096 content as well. I'm going to share my screen so that we can take a look at Unit 4, X and Y-Intercept practice. This is one of our homework assignments. And specifically, I wanted to look at question number 3 because I have had questions on this particular topic. So let's take a look at this together, and hopefully the breakdown will really make sense to you and you'll be successful for future problems. Marcos purchases a top-up card for his prepaid cell phone. His remaining balance B can be modeled by the equation B is equal to 45 minus 0.3 N, where N is the number of minutes he's talked since purchasing the card. The very first thing I like doing with problems like this is identifying the ordered pair. We're not using X and Y in this case, we're using N and B. So I want you to think of N as the number of minutes he's talked since purchasing the card as the input value, where B depends on the number of minutes, right? That will provide the remaining balance. So underneath this N, I will also write down the number of minutes. And then underneath B, I'm going to write remaining balance. And remember that this is referring to the amount of money that is left on this prepaid card. So this is definitely something that I want you to get into the habit of doing, identifying what are those variables, how do they work together, because it's not X and Y this time, it's N input, B output, independent variable, dependent variable. The remaining balance depends on the number of minutes that Marcos has talked on using this prepaid cell phone. Okay, so the first question is how much money was on the card when he purchased it? I want you to think of that action of purchasing that particular prepaid cell phone and to think about the fact that if you just purchase it, you haven't talked any minutes, have you? You literally have not spoken a single minute using that cell phone yet since you just purchased it. So what I would like to do is right above here how much money was on the card when he purchased it. I want to say this implies N is equal to 0. The number of minutes spoken on this prepaid cell phone is 0, nothing. We haven't used it yet. So having said that, let's think about our ordered pair. We're saying that N is 0, which implies I don't know B. I don't know the remaining balance, and that's what I'd like to figure out. So we then take our equation, which is B is equal to 45 minus 0.3 N, and of course, naturally, where I have N, I'm going to replace it with a 0 because we're talking 0 minutes, and we want to know how much is on the card when we essentially purchase it. So if we haven't used it yet, how much money is left on that card? We do the math and we find that B is 45. So what that implies is that the remaining balance is $45. So we'll go ahead right here into our Lumen homework and we're going to say how much money was on the card when you purchased it? 45 bucks. It hasn't been used yet. There are no minutes that have been used on this card. Which intercept is this? Well, I want you to think about the fact that we zeroed out N and we have a value for B. We're actually calculating that value for B, which implies that this is a B intercept. If that idea is trippy to you, I want you to think about an X-intercept and a Y-intercept. When you have an X-intercept, think of the fact that it's on the X-axis. An X-intercept is always of the form the X-coordinate, comma, 0. That's how you're on the X-axis. If you have a Y-intercept, you're on the Y-axis, which means your ordered pair is going to be 0, comma, the Y-coordinate, right? 0, Y-coordinate, that's the Y-intercept. You're somewhere on the Y-axis. So when you zero out that one particular variable and you have a value for the other, you found its intercept. So this one right here would be referred to as the B intercept. It may be helpful to write that next to that particular ordered pair. That is our B intercept. Next, how many minutes will he have talked when he runs out of money? That means there's no dollars remaining on that card. So what I'm going to write directly above this is that this implies that B is equal to 0. Right? This implies that the remaining balance is $0. So we're going to go through this same process again, except we need to figure out how many minutes we can talk before there's no more money on the card. So we use the exact same equation. B is equal to 45 minus 0.3n, but this time we're going to replace B with 0. And we're going to go through the motions of solving this. I can bring the 45 over, or I can add 0.3n to both sides. And I'm actually going to do that only because I want to keep my variable positive. So I'm going to add 0.3n. What you do to one side, you do to the other, right? Notice that they're opposite operations. So our negative 0.3n and our positive 0.3n, these terms are going to cancel each other out. 0 plus 0.3n is still 0.3n. That's equal to 45. We bring that 45 down. And then, of course, divide both sides by 0.3. If we take our calculator and we punch in 45 divided by 0.3, you're going to get that n is 150. What that implies is that Marcos can talk for 150 minutes before running out of money on this prepaid cell phone, okay? This refers to the N-intercept, okay? So we're going to answer that question here. How many minutes will he have talked when he runs out of money? Well, we figured that out. That's 150 minutes. We also determined that this would be the N-intercept. The very last piece here is, what is the slope of this equation? One of the things to consider at this point is we can look at the formula and identify that it's actually in slope-intercept form. Or we can take the two ordered pairs that we have, which are, and I'm going to write these out clearly. Our first ordered pair is the B-intercept, which is 0, 45. And our second ordered pair, which is the N-intercept, is the ordered pair 150, 0. We can take both of these ordered pairs and we can actually plug this into the slope formula. What I will tell you is that when you actually solve this slope, you're going to get negative 0.3 because this formula is actually in slope-intercept form. Okay, first, let me write down that slope-intercept form is y is equal to mx plus b. The equation that we were provided is just in the reverse order, but the slope-intercept form is there. So check this out. Directly underneath, I'm going to write the equation that we have below, just in descending order. So notice what I have. B is equal to negative 0.3n plus 45. Notice that that means that our slope is negative 0.3. And also notice that my y-intercept, or in this case, the b-intercept, is a positive 45, which we had. We found this. We already did the math. We're proving that we know what we're talking about. So just from looking at this equation itself, we can say, well, I know the slope. The slope is negative 0.3 because that's what I was provided. Now, the less intuitive part here is this whole idea of what are the units on the slope. What's going to help us to identify that is to just think about the slope formula itself. Do you realize that slope is rise or fall over run, right? So it's rise or fall over run. When you think about rising or falling, I want you to think about your change in y, right? Rising or falling implies you're changing in y. If you look at your ordered pair here, and you think about that traditionally, our ordered pair would be x comma y, even though right now it's n comma b. So our change in y is actually the same as our change in b, the remaining balance, which is in dollars. So when I think about this numerator here, I'm going to say that that's the change in dollars, right? So change in money, whereas the run refers to the change in x, right? The change in x, which in this case, x is the number of minutes Marcos talks. So it's the change in money or over the change in minutes. So when we think about the units here for this particular problem, I want you to think of dollars per minute. So when we go to the drop down menu here, what are the units on the slope? It is dollars per minute, okay? The change in Y, which is your remaining balance in dollars, over the change in X, which is the change in minutes, the number of minutes Marcos talks. And once you select all those, submit it, and you are all set. I hope that you found this to be helpful. Let me know if I can help with any other types of problems by creating videos for you. It has been a pleasure as always. Bye.